I was woken up this morning by yet another air raid siren here in Ukraine. At about 6 a.m, I opened the air raid app and the whole of Ukraine was illuminated in red, every single region. This sort of stuff wasn't happening at the frequency and intensity as it is now when I first arrived in this country about 2 weeks ago. But in the last 10 days, Ukraine has seen some of the worst attacks since the full-scale invasion. Last week, you had the worst attack in one day, the most missiles put into this country, into every major city from east to west. You've had 5 hotels blown up because Putin is now targeting journalists at an unprecedented rate. And this morning, it looks like missiles went into the ancient city of Lviv and killed so far 7 people, some of those children. Lviv is only 40 miles from the Polish border, and that's NATO's border, and it set off air defense systems in Poland as well. Nothing was fired in and out of Poland, but it alerted their systems, and it's concerning for people in Poland because Lviv is very far to the west of Ukraine, if you look at it here on a map, and the Russians are hitting it because they can, because they're allowed to. Now, the missiles that have been taken off from Russia in the last week or so that have been terrorizing and killing hundreds of people in this country were taken off from air bases deep inside Russia. Planes take off, Soviet era, 1950s, 1960s era planes take off from those airfields. They fly over the skies of Ukraine and they release hypersonic missiles. Those are missiles that can travel up to 7,000 miles an hour. That's up to about 25 miles a second. They're incredibly hard to shoot down because they go so quickly and they cause nothing but mayhem wherever they land. And Russia is allowed to do this, and they're getting more confident doing this because despite Ukraine knowing where those air bases are and knowing where all the launch points are, this country isn't allowed to hit Russia back. This country isn't interested in hitting civilian targets. They're not barbarians like the Russians are behaving. They're interested in hitting the places where things are launching from and landing in these cities. And in war, that's completely normal. In fact, that's how two sides fight in a war. One side launches munitions and the other side launch counter munitions. And they launch things back where they came from. But the West isn't allowing this country to defend itself. The West has given this country weapons, they've given them missiles, they've given them the stuff they need, not quickly enough, but they've given them that stuff. And they've told Ukraine that they're not allowed to hit those sites in Russia. And it's overcautious and it doesn't make sense. And every day that Ukraine isn't allowed to defend itself, more people are going to die, more journalists are going to die, more children are going to die, and this is only going to get worse because the West is sending a message to Putin right now. The West is saying to Putin, you can do whatever you like. Ukraine is the largest country in Europe, and it's being pounded every day, 40 miles from NATO's border. And the West is saying, you can carry on and do whatever you like. We're not going to let Ukraine hit you back. And that's giving Putin a lot of confidence at the moment. And it looks like our governments are basically siding with him at this point. And I think that's why these attacks are increasing so much. I mean, there is a second reason, and that's that Putin is humiliated at the moment. I think the walls are closing in some ways for him. He's had to increase the taxes in the last few weeks in Russia, which is annoying the middle class because 41% of Russia's GDP is Russia's public spending is on this pointless war. So that's upsetting all the wrong people. We're also reaching about a month long of Kursk being invaded. It's the first time Russia's been invaded since the Second World War. And the Ukrainians are dug in and they're still there now. That's humiliating for Putin. It also shows that he's running out of on-the-ground resources. And it's embarrassing for him. And I think he's angry at journalists for reporting what's going on. That's why he put a missile into the Hotel Sapphire filled with Reuters staff last week in the east of this country. And that's why he's increasing attacks here as well. A, because he's allowed to, and B, because he feels humiliated, and he feels entitled to. I expect this to get significantly worse in Ukraine over the next few months. As winter sets in and the power stations are being obliterated, it's going to be freezing cold here and people are going to start seriously suffering. And again, as long as the West continues to allow Putin to hammer key infrastructure here without Ukraine being allowed to hit things back, then things are going to get significantly worse. I spent a lot of time talking to people here in southern Ukraine in the last few days about what they think of America and what they think of British people. When I first got to this country last year with John Sweeney, people were so proud and patriotic about the Brits and about the Americans because of the weapons they'd supplied and the amazing support right at the beginning. But that's starting to wane. I've been speaking to people in the last few days and they're kind of getting a bit fed up of America. Everyone here knows that the Americans aren't letting Ukraine hit Russia back. And it's like fighting a war with one arm behind your back. And that is sad. It's really sad because the West is letting this country down. So Zarina Zabriskie is a friend of mine. She's a journalist an American journalist who's been based here in Ukraine for the last couple of years. She is currently in the east of this country right now. She's in Sumy. And she was at the site of one of Putin's horrible missile attacks in the last 48 hours. She filmed some of the wreckage and she did a small report. So I'm going to play that for you now. And then I'm going to join her live from the east to talk about what's been happening in this country in the last few days.
Behind me you see Sumy State University. It was attacked last night about 10:30 at night with either a guided aerial bomb or a missile. There is an investigation going on right now. Luckily there were no victims as there were no students at the machinery building department of the university, which is the building behind me, at night. There was, however, a security guard. He was lightly injured. Right behind me is a small gym. There were classrooms here, nothing of military significance whatsoever, anywhere close in the vicinity. This was one of at least 5 attacks, explosions that I've heard personally. Overnight, there were reports of Shahid drones attacking Sumy, a regional center only about 40 kilometers from the Russian border. The distance is questionable because currently the Ukrainian troops have moved into the Russian territory and controlling a part of the Kursk Oblast, which is the border region of the Russian Federation. This attack on Sumy is just one of many on this city in the last week. The nightly and daily attacks here, and also it is just one of multiple attacks on Ukraine that the Russian Federation committed over the last 24 hours.
Zarina, thanks so much for joining me right now. You've been in Sumy for a couple of days, I can see, and you were at this site yesterday. But I want to start with what you think is going on in this country and how significant this is all becoming.
Yes, Caolan, unfortunately, we're still getting the reports back because a lot of people, both bodies and injured, are still under the rubble all over the country. For what I had as of this morning was obviously Poltava hit yesterday. The rescue work still ongoing. As of now, 50 plus dead and 200 and plus injured, and the numbers are growing. There is also the trend of hitting hotels that's been going on for the last week. So the last night added Kryvyi Rih, where the numbers are still being specified. But the previous day in Zaporizhia, there were a number of victims and a family was killed where a mother and a young son, 8-year-old son, were killed, and the father and about 12-year-old daughter were badly injured. So that continues in the city where I'm based right now for this week in Sumy. Either an aerial bomb or a missile hit a university building that was a machine building department, and there was only a security guard on site. He was slightly injured, but there were about 5 other explosions that I've heard. We also have Lviv, of course, on everybody's mind, because as of this moment, there's 7 dead and dozens of injured. The rescue work still continue among the dead. 3 children at least among them 9-year-old and 14-year-old girl.
Well, thanks so much for joining me and talking about all this, and I'll see you this weekend in Kyiv.
Thank you, Caolan.
Thank you so much for watching, and this is my 4th episode of the Culture Report. Again, I'll be doing this every single day from different locations in Ukraine. If you have any thoughts, comments, feedback, leave them in the section below. And if you like this report, please click subscribe. I'm only 50 subscribers away from 1,000, and that means this channel can enter the next phase of being recommended and start being boosted. So please hit subscribe, like the video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.